Welcome back to Fairy Tail Anime Review. This is part 9. This one reviewing Fairy Tail Zero. Edgar and I are planning to review of this next week. He couldn't do it today because he's kind of busy. So I kind of figured though, I just do my own thoughts here, and of course I'll give more also other thoughts. My similar feelings on this particular 10 episode story as part of our joint review of it next week. So, this 10 episode story. Basically, this 10 episode is an adaptation of a 13 chapter manga, written of course by the creator of Fairy Tail, Hideo Mishimiya. I think that's even the guy's name. Now, the manga itself is only 13 chapters, which roughly this particular thing sticks pretty close to it. I would say the only slight alteration they do from the story is the one scene when you have Mavis, who's pretty much the main character of the story, and Zira, when they're bathing in the lake. In the manga, they're actually in the nude. In the anime, they are actually wearing swimsuits. I get kind of the reason why they did this, because it'd be kind of awkward to see two 13-year-olds in nude in an anime. In the manga, it's okay, but in the anime, it's probably like a no-no. But yet Mavis was in the nude in not the Natsu versus Mavis one. I think that was an exception for two reasons. One, it's a bathhouse, so obviously women are all naked. And two, at that point she's over 100 years old, so they probably got away with it. But at this point she's exactly 13 years old, so they couldn't get away with it here. Now the story starts off. Now, unlike in the manga, which starts off with the actual story featuring Mavis, in the anime, they actually do something a bit different. Now, this was never shown. I remember showing this in the manga at all. The thing starts off with Natsu and Happy just visiting the capital city of Floor, and they just try to figure out what they're going to do during their. And apparently, it's been a week since they left, so they're just trying to decide exactly what they're going to do, and they just go wandering about. Oh, I also forgot to mention that during the 1 year jump, they actually, this mentioned the 2 episodes after this one, that they ran into Gildarts. I don't know if Gildarts was ever informed of the fact that Fairy Tail disbanded. I highly doubt he would ever know, because, well, he usually goes on long quests, which is what he does. But they said they go visit Mavis's grave on Tenor Island, and of course, they do reference what happened during the. They do reference the fact that Kana give information where Mavis's grave is on Tenor Island, which they bring up also during their talk about what they were doing during their travels. They go to the island, take a little while to actually find the grave, see it, and then they flash back exactly. I think it's 100. And I think it's, because at this point it's 791, and the thing jumps back to 679, so that's, trying to think, how many years is that? That is, I think, 112 years. Let me look it up on my phone to see how many years it flashed. Hey, I think it's 112. I want to check and see, be sure of this. Yep, it's 112 years. Where it starts off with a 5-year-old Mavis wearing rags, and apparently she's a orphan because apparently it's referenced that her parents died, and she's working for the Red Scale Guild in order to pay off their debt. Okay. And the master treats her like crap. He basically takes away because the fact she forgot to clean the outside of the guild. He takes away the only pair of shoes she's ever actually owned, which apparently he gave to her. Yeah, and the guy is a complete jerk, and his daughter's a jerk as well, though she kind of basically makes up for it later. And she keeps, and the thing about Mavis is she loves reading books. And this, of course, is referenced also later on in the regular story where she's a tactician. That's the reason why she's so smart, because she's done lots of reading. She loves to read books. So, though the book she's seen reading in there, the master decides to stomp on it and burn it because he's a jerk. And his daughter is a jerk as well. Basically, even though she treated Mavis like crap, uh, Mavis is nice to her for some reason. Yeah, this something kind of bugs me about it. Then uh, one day, basically, she's asked to give Zera her lunch because she forgot to bring it to her. And she managed to get to school on time before the lunch period, though she was talking to her. She basically had animal show because she met some animals along the way. So, yeah. She drops it off, and of course, her friends are getting kind of jealous of the fact they're talking to her because she's got an animal on her shoulder. So she pushes her, she leaves, and then she just sits on a tree. Apparently, she falls asleep because she stayed up late studying, basically remembering a lot of math. And then when she wakes up, the town on Tenor Island, basically that's where a lot of the story, basically the first 2 or 3 episodes are set basically on Tenor Island. They're attacked by by the Blue Skull Guild, which is later revealed to be a Dark Wizard Guild. Yeah, and I'll get to them in a minute. They attack the town. They pretty much kill everybody in the whole entire village. They massacre everybody. This is actually the first time for an anime I've actually seen a massacre in an anime. I would say on screen for the first time since Naruto, when they had the on-screen depiction of the massacre of the Uchiha clan committed by Itachi and Obito. This was about, I think this was about 7 years of the present day of Naruto. That's when the massacre took place. Yeah. Yeah, this is the first time I've actually seen that, like an on-screen depiction of a massacre. Though I don't count what happened in Yu Hakusho because that was a flashback. Because that was a flashback, and you don't get a chance to see a massacre in that show. Though it's a dark scene, but you don't get a chance to see an actual massacre in that series. Yeah. So, and apparently Mavis saves Zera, though apparently her legs are basically crushed somehow, and she's able to pull it out of the rubble, and yet she's able to walk. This is never explained. And then apparently she dies. And then we jump ahead 7 years later. Mavis is 13 years old, a little more grown up, and apparently Zera's there as well. And I'll get to basically the strange explanation for her at the end. Then 3 members who actually helped found a Fairy Tail with Mavis, which is Woodrin, I think is his name, the guy who basically one of the Wizard Saints. This is him in human form. Yosef Dreyer, Makarov's father, and Laxus' great-grandfather. And the guy who became Hades, who basically was the second master of the Fairy Tail Guild, and the founder of and the master of Grimoire Heart. And one thing that's kind of weird about him, he wears a coat very similar to how the coat similar coat that Shino used to wear, one that covers up half his face. Yeah, for some reason he wears this the whole time, and he even keeps this when he becomes the master of Grimoire Heart. I do not understand the reason for this, but this anime, and of course Fairy Tail Zero, does get an explanation of why he wears an eye patch. Yeah, that I'll get to in a minute. So at least some stuff in this anime, and of course the manga, does explain some things that's seen later on, which I gotta praise the writer for doing that. So they sort of, when they show me it's basically she and Zera basically are just trying to reorganize life because apparently it's a mess. So she has to clean it up. And then the first episode ends with the 3 of the 4 founding members of Fairy Tail, of course Mavis also founded with them as well, where they just arrive in Tenor Island looking for the Tenor Jewel. And Yuri basically runs into Mavis at the library, and they set her sort of a match of wits, basically who is smarter. Excuse me. And Mavis wins. Both times. Yeah. Oh, and in case you're wondering, does Woodrin use his magic at this point? Nope. Woodrin, the guy who became Hades, and Yuri had no magic with him at all. Mavis does know magic, but that's shown a couple episodes later. I think about 3 or 4 episodes after this one. So they meet everybody. and then they decided, and then they go to the Tenor Jewel, and they find the Tenor Jewel's been taken, and Mavis figures out though, because she's been out for 7 years, and she figures out that these three did not take the jewel. It was taken when the Blue Skull Guild attacked the island 7 years prior. So she asked them to take it with her because she knows a lot of basically battle strategies, and they're like, okay, fine, we'll take you with you. And of course, Zira kind of comes along as well. And like I said, I'll get to in a minute basically of what her deal is. Yeah. And they go on their journey, and it's basically she's trying to talk to him for a bit, basically, things of sailing and trying to adjust it. I mean, she studied a lot of ocean currents, so she has a pretty good idea of basically what she's doing. She's smart at it. Yuri thinks it's kind of annoying. The only one who doesn't basically think Mavis is annoying, I would probably say, who doesn't get annoyed by Mavis, is probably Pentrin, I think his name is. Yeah, he doesn't get annoyed by her at all. No, not necessarily. Usually just Yuri gets annoyed by her. But yeah, he warms up to her later on. So, she hears that they suffer through financial trouble because of the expedition they're on. So, she basically goes swimming with the dolphins, and somehow she decided to make a swimsuit. Yeah, this is never explained. And she takes off her dress. Oh yeah, she has a swimsuit underneath, and she's going swimming with the dolphins. They set out to wake the three other members of basically three guys. She goes swimming, and she finds there's actually a pyramid underneath it. What looks like, when I see this pyramid, it looks like a Mayan pyramid. The only reason I know this because I've seen pictures of Mayan pyramids. I've never been to one, but I know what the things look like. But it looks like a Mayan pyramid. But it's a completely different civilization. But it just seems a little odd, though, to see a pyramid on the ocean floor. This just seems a little odd. And she goes back up, and she puts on a magical scuba gear, which, the way it looks, it kind of looks like the old-fashioned diving suits. You know, with the whole big globe thing. Yeah, that is something that people don't use anymore. My guess is because it takes place at this point 107 years, at least 105 years at this point. Yeah, 105 years. My guess is that's perfectly acceptable. But yeah, basically her outfit is simply just like a put-on globe thing with a small oxygen tank, and that's it. But the outfit does remind me of the old-fashioned diving suits. I've seen pictures of these things. I think I've actually seen one of these things in person. Basically as a sort of like basically a stand-up thing. I've seen statues of these things, so I have a pretty good idea what I'm talking about. So she goes swimming underneath, and she basically is so smart she actually can figure out traps pretty easily. And she gets to this ritual room, and she's deciphering the graphs. And of course, then there was a fish in there, a giant fish, and then Yuri and Wardred comes in to save her. And Yuri basically uses a weapon that uses electricity, and Ward basically is explained a little bit earlier that his gun shoots nets. And she basically uses her knowledge to decipher graphs and just turns the head backwards. The heads are turned backwards. That when she gets in this room, all these statues' heads are basically their heads are facing away from the star in the middle. So she figures out, yeah, let's just turn these statues around. In which I'm thinking, couldn't she do that sooner? So she turns all the heads around, and the thing sort of explodes, and of course they get back to the surface. Yeah, how they get back to the surface, that's never shown. And apparently they took the time to nab some jewels. Yeah, basically Yuri nabbed some jewels, the small jewels here and there. Mavis grabbed a crown. Yep. And she figured, though, basically that because, well, she read that treasure exists in places like this, she figured this helped pay off some of their. It will solve their financial problems. So get to a port, and they just, well, get in, and basically Zira and Pitcher basically go and try to investigate exactly where can they find the Blue Skull Guild. And they basically do a little bit of, well, walking around. The Pentrin scares some people, and by intimidating them, because, well, he's an intimidating guy. And he also takes down a tree, which everybody was kind of sad about. Of course, they later apologized to him for acting the way they did, because they turned out the tree was actually rotted. And he also stepped in front of a cart because basically the back wheel was about to come off basically, and because the screw was loose. So he pointed that out. He stopped the carriage, like, "Hey, your back tires, needs to get it needs to is going to be coming off soon." And he fixed it. He's like, he probably thinks he's lying. And then basically 2 citizens randomly come out of nowhere and say, "Yeah, he's telling the truth. Yeah, this thing basically looked like it was going to come off." So he had every right to stop him. Though I think he was an idiot anyways. But yeah, unlike with the tree thing where he got apologies for it, yeah, they complained to him after they fixed the cart, which is a bit odd. And the boy points out, yeah, go to this bar because, well, the guy basically who told him about it is, "Don't go to that bar, bad people hang out there." And Pinter's like, I think I'll go here. Mavis goes with him. And she's like, "Would you like a glass of it?" Because even he knows not to serve alcohol to minors. Yeah, he knows that himself. So, yeah. And basically, she uses her illusion. Well, first they get trapped in a magic circle because they figured out that at that point that the Blue Skull Guild is basically a dark wizard guild, basically. Because they reference, though, Mavis figures out that he's lying because he doesn't know. Because, like, how would you know that they're a magician's guild? Yes. How would he know that if he's never heard of them? Yeah, and it turns out the guy is one of the people he's one of the wizards for them, and they trap him in a magic circle. It's like, oh yeah, if you try to leave magic circle, you die. Livius figures out very quickly that it doesn't work at all because, well, he screwed up one of the letters. So they get out of the thing, and basically she gets information about him by conjuring up an illusion about a giant, basically, guardian beast. And they figure out they're actually in Manolia, the city where Fairy Tail was founded. And they get there, and they sever this is actually quite different to how it is in present day, where it's actually quite nice. At this point, Magnolia is basically, how should I put this? A hellhole. Yeah, buildings are falling apart. People, it looks like they're starving on the streets, and the economy is terrible because Blue Skull Guild has them under their thumb, and their famous church has a giant skeletal dragon on top of it, which even I think that is stupid. Oh yeah, and Blue Skull Guild uses the church as their guild hall. I'm like, seriously? Couldn't you build your own building and not use a church? Yeah, it's so stupid. So they take out 3 of them, basically trying to save a guy who had been shot by basically, and they take on 3 of them, no problem. But trying to take on like a whole bunch of them, and they barely get out of there intact. Also during this bout, this is where Pentrin gets basically, this is how he loses his eye. And for the rest of this point forward, he basically is forced to wear an eye patch, which he does continually wear that in present day. So yeah, this particular instance is the reason why he wears an eye patch, because the eye was lost during a battle with the Dark Wizard Guild. Though they never reference why he wears an eye patch, he just, well, okay, a villain, let's put an eye patch on him for just no explaining reason. My guess is the reason why that he did that, because, well, he was seen, he's got 2 good eyes, and some people probably read the manga as like, okay, at what point did he lose his eye? Yeah, like, oh yeah, this is never going to be explained. And yes, and of course it does. So they get out of there, and of course Yuri is basically heavily injured, seriously injured, and of course the other ones just barely survive. And then Mavis basically, well, she previously sort of walked by him early in a previous episode. Basically, and this is probably one of the most bizarre scenes in the anime. Even the manga, this was bizarre. She meets Zeref when he just finished bathing, and he is in the nude. And thank gosh for the anime for not showing his groin. Even the manga was decent enough not to do this. To show a guy who at this point is over 300 years old, and they don't give him a full frontal nudity shot, which thank God for that. And even she's nervous about seeing a guy butt naked, and yet She's only 13. And how does he get dressed? Just simply just pull a towel and bam, he's basically dressed. And I have to point this out, though. Why hasn't anybody told him he dresses in the most bizarre fashion of all? I mean, his outfit is simply a long waistcoat with this tablecloth that he wears, like some kind of sash. And that is how he dresses. And he doesn't like touching things very much because whenever he touches anything, it's forever cursed. And apparently starts up disintegrating. Of course, it's shown in the previous episode that Forrest is basically left in ruin, and it turns out that Zeref was behind it. They don't know it actually is Zeref because they probably don't know who the heck he is. And even he was surprised that she was able to identify the curse that he has. So she asked him to teach her and her friends magic, which he's like, sure, why not? I got nothing else to do. Probably because Zeref likes wandering around the place. He's always sad. But one thing interesting you gotta notice about Zeref, when you look at him, he doesn't seem evil. Not at all. Hades was definitely evil. But as, well, in present day, of course, in the past, he's actually a nice guy. But Zeref, you can never really tell if he's evil or not. That's one thing interesting about him. Excuse me. So, yeah. So he teaches them all about Ether Nano, which he spends a little while on this, and then eventually all of them start developing magic. Basically, Warren develops using plant magic, Yuri uses electricity, Pentrin just basically uses his finger and just forms like an energy gun, and fires a chain out of his hand. Just kind of similar. It's kind of similar to his regular chain weapon he normally seen using. Of course, they also show a flashback during this period of time when these streamers before the fight, maybe this when they were getting a flower from this ruined city, which been covered with toxic gas. They do a reference to that, and of course Woodrin basically Yuri basically decided to just not talk about it. Yeah, of course they all know magic, and basically, and of course Zera learns magic as well, which is a bit. Okay, fine. She knows fire magic. And Mavis is taught a particular spell, which is basically, I'll talk about that in a minute, its significance to Fairy Tail Guild. So, she formulates a strategy to take down the Blue Skull Guild, and of course get the Tarot Jewel. So, she has the Master basically trapped in his hunting area, and everybody else just attacks the guild headquarters, which, the thing is, the Blue Skull Guild, even though they got good numbers, they're terrible wizards. Because they get easily blasted by Petra and Yuri. And they find the Tenor Jewel, Yuri picks it up, and he merges with the Blue Skull Dragon, and goes on a rampage along Manolia. And then eventually, the spell that Zeref taught her, which is called Law, which when you look at it, it's basically fairy law, and it's supposed to take 10 years to learn this particular spell. And she uses the spell, frees Yuri from the thing, and the Tarot Crystal is destroyed. And because of her using this spell early, even though she's supposed to master over the course of 10 years, she can't grow anymore. She's stuck at the same height. She's healthy. I'm sure she can still age, but she can't grow anymore. And also, it's revealed that Zera is an illusion. Yep, this comes completely out of nowhere and probably explains a lot. Basically, when she's trying to talk to Pentrin, he's like making expressions like she's talking directly at him, and I'm like, even in manga, I was like, okay, why in the world isn't he listening to her? And it turns out the reason why, because she's an illusion and only Mavis can see her. So, yeah, and apparently because the fact this illusion been going on for at least 7 years. Oh, if I say 17 years, I think it's 7 years. So she had to let go, and she's very sad about it. And of course, briefly before she leaves, Yuri does see her, and Yuri decides to just become Mavis's friend and protector, and Mavis decides to start up a guild, a new wizard guild in Magnolia, basically because he fought so hard to get on her from the thumb of Blue Skull Guild, and they decided to start a guild right there with just these 4 to start off with. Of course, later on they have more, and because the fact the guild was her idea, and the fact that they built their own new guild hall, which basically was the first look that the guild hall had at the start of the Fairy Tail series, though it's been destroyed a couple times. So yeah, so she basically, of course, Petra calls her Master. She's like, Master? Yeah, they want to name her the first Master because the guild, starting up the guild was actually her idea. And of course, they went along with it. And of course, Petra later became, it's later explained that Petra became guild master after Mavis's death. And Yuri, during the course of a trade war, met a girl, got married, and of course had Makarov. And of course, they do a summary of the events leading up to the series, like some of the stuff leading up to the series, and of course the Tenor Island incident with Agaloria, and when they were came back in 791. Yeah, and of course the segment ends with basically them mentioning that Fairy Tail was disbanded, and yeah. Now, the opening song is really good. It's like really gets you pumped up. It's like, yeah. That basically they threw that on in there. It's a really good rock song. It has good segments of stuff you will see later on in the series. Later on this 10-parter, it's a great opening song. And probably by far one of the best opening songs in the entire series. So it just seems kind of odd that this would be like the last season of the show, well, until next year, by the way. But yeah, of course, after this was a 2-parter that basically was adaptations of chapters 418, 419. You can talk, and you can see my review of that two videos back before this one. My thoughts on some episodes, but the Fairy Tail Zero manga and anime, really good. Does explain the origin of Fairy Tail. I'm sure that you could tell more stories basically set during the time period of basically, well, 686, which is the present day stuff, and up until basically Lucy joined. I'm sure there's still plenty of stories to tell there of the history of Fairy Tail, but who knows if the right creator will actually do anything about that. But yeah, highly recommend this. Though I do recommend watching it after you finish watching everything related to the anime and the manga, because it does kind of spoil stuff down the road, basically, because they do like little caption things, like for Yuri, it's like Makarov's father. For Pentrin, second master of the guild and master of Grimoire Heart. And Woodrin, basically one of the 10 Wizard Saints. He's ranked number 4. So, out of the 4 people here, the only ones who actually more than once is, well, Yuri is the only one, actually the only one we've never seen before out of the 4 characters who appear, the 4 main characters who appear in Fairy Tail Zero. Mavis we've seen plenty of time before this. So, Mavis, plenty of time for her. We had the whole arc with Petrin, though he did also show up briefly during the Teteros arc after his death. As for Yuri, never seen before or after this anime, or at least the manga. Basically, he just, like, when I heard the last name Dre, I'm like, okay, is he related to Makarov? Yep, he's Makarov's father. Yep. So, yeah. So, that's it for this episode. I'm not sure when I'm going to do the next episode. It'll probably be when Fairy Tail Dragon Cry comes out, which is going to come out in a little over a week from now. Not this coming week, but the following week was when it was going to come out, okay? But until then, I will see you there. Bye.